Hi, it's Kim, and welcome to another layout for Uniquely Creative. This is for my guest design role for March 2023, working with the Grand Adventures collection. Today I'm making a grid layout, and I am using this particular pattern paper with the arches on it that comes in the collection, along with a set of dies which are also available as part of the March release. And I am going to cut a range of arch-shaped pieces from the pattern paper, and then I am going to cut arch shapes from my photos. So I have two sizes from the patterned paper, so just showing you there how I cut those out, and then I've passed over the rest of them, but I've cut a whole heap of the squares out of that, or the arches out of that pattern paper, and now I am cutting my photos into arch shapes, just getting it into the right position. The packaging on the top is just as a shim to make the die a little bit tighter to get a clean cut. So there are my photos cut into the arch shape, and they are the same size as the bigger size in the paper. And then I've also cut some smaller arches out of the pattern paper as well, and you'll see me layer this up in a moment. So now I'm just working out how I'm going to lay this out on my sheet of paper. So I've used the wood grain pattern paper as the background for this layout. And you can see here that I've got one arch shape out of the pattern paper, and I've layered a smaller arch shape because the dies are nested dies so that you can cut different shapes, arches out. And so that's what I've done. So the two pattern papers is a bigger and the next size down arch, and the photos are cut to the same size as the larger size, which is the biggest arch in those dies. Now these little silver titles are stickers, glitter stickers of words that come with the March collection, the Grand Adventures collection, and I really like them. They're super cute. And so I'm going to incorporate them as words on each of the photos. So those silver words will appear on each of the photos, and then I'm going to create clusters of embellishments on each of the paper squares. So I know they're arches, but effectively this is this layout's design is as a 6 grid, and so each of the squares in the grid are represented by one of those arched shapes. And so I am now treating each square or arch of the grid as a separate element, and then the title's going to go in between there, and that is from a die cut. So I'm using various die cuts that I've got left. So I have made a number of layouts from this kit that I was using, and I'm not sure which number. I think this might have been the last layout that I actually created, and so I have less elements left in the die cuts, but I'm going through those and picking out ones that work, and I'm adding those onto either the paper squares as embellishments or adding some of them to the photo squares. I'm just looking to see whether maybe I might use one of these chipboard titles instead of the word, but I actually really like the simplicity of the adventure word strip across the middle of this layout. So it is a very clean design, and I think it really works well because of the pattern paper background, gives it interest, and then the arches give a lot of interest. So what I've done here is I've actually cut this signpost from one of the pattern papers, which has a pile of elements on it that you can fussy cut out. So I have fussy cut out that sign, and now I am going to stick these sticker words on. Now, they are very sticky, and they are also very fine. So they're a little bit fiddly to stick down, but once they're stuck down, you can be assured they are stuck, and they look fantastic when they're stuck down. So I've actually curved them because they're quite flexible. I've actually curved them around on the arches for this particular one, and I think I do it on another one as well. So some of them I've put on straight, and some of them I have shaped. So that word travel that's in that top left corner, I've been able to shape that, and I think it looks really good. So I tried a couple of different techniques to get the words stickers cleanly off the clear acetate backing, but they were very fiddly. But it's okay. They went down fine. And the best part is if you do happen to tear them, you can stick them down and join them and you won't even see it. So it's all good in the end. So this just takes me a few minutes to get these stuck down. So these are photos of my husband and I from a weekend that we had away down in Southland in the South Island of New Zealand. So we visited Bluff for the day as part of that trip, and this was some pictures from our visit to Bluff. So it was actually pretty cool. I really enjoyed it. So you can see there that the smaller arch I have popped up on using foam tape on top of the bigger arch, and now I'm using foam tape under some of the embellishments to give more dimension to them. So it's not a really dimensional layout. It's only essentially 2 foam tapes thick. So it's not very lumpy bumpy. And I'm also adding some foam tape behind these die cut elements that I am sticking on my layout. And so I've got another silver sparkly word here. I believe that photo in the bottom right corner, I may not stick a silver word on. So it's just the one in the top left, the middle bottom row, and the top right. You can see here that this sticker's in a couple of parts. I think I accidentally broke it as I was sticking it down, but you can easily join them back together, and they are, as I said, super sticky, so no problems, I think, with them lifting. And now I'm going to create this section of the grid with this arches, and again I'm putting foam tape behind this second layer so it will pop up slightly off the back layer. And then I've got the little word circle and also the signpost embellishment, which is super cute. So on one of the other layouts I used the signpost die cut. Really like this element. It is a very cute embellishment for a travel layout, and then I fussy cut this one from the pattern paper. You do get a couple of sheets of each of the pattern papers in this collection kit, and so it means there's lots of flexibility to cut out some of the really cute embellishments that if you need extra embellishments. So just, as I said, popping that foam tape there. I really like the words that are on here. It worked really well for our weekend getaway. I was just looking at another title option there, but I've decided to stick with the adventure. So yeah, the theme of this kit is a travel kit, but it works really well for weekends away or longer trips, and it's a really nice colour palette on this collection as well. You could just see that pattern paper there. I was looking, there's various elements that I could cut out, whether there was something else that I wanted to include, but I've decided that I don't really need to add any more to this. So I'm just now putting foam tape behind the photo arches. So remember, I popped up the middle of the paper arches, so I popped up the smaller of the arches, but with the photos I'm popping up the whole arch. But when I stick down the paper arches, I will stick the larger arch directly to the paper. So now the photos will end up at the same height as the smaller arch on the paper arches, if that makes sense. Now I'm doing my measurements of my arches, so just checking its length and working out where on the page I will want the arches to sit. So I've worked out halfway, and then I'm going a bit up and a bit down from that to evenly space out my arches, because when you're doing a grid layout like this, which is a simple and graphic layout, you need to make sure that your spacing is pretty spot on so that it looks right. So I'm just working out all my spacing here, which I did get a little bit wrong when I did the horizontal measurements, because I divided the page by 3 and then worked out and then put them in the center of each portion of the page. But of course that left small spaces on the far left and far right, and effectively created double the space between each of the elements because I put them in the centre of each. If I divided the page equally into 6 squares, I was sitting each of the arches in the centre of each of those squares, which meant that the spacing was not right horizontally. It worked fine vertically because the title's going in between the 2 lots of arches, and so therefore a bigger space there worked well. So you'll see that I ended up having to pull up the arches and just move them a little bit to get that spacing right, which was lucky I could because this particular double-sided tape, as you can see, sticks really well. But luckily I only had to move it over a little way and I could cover up the mess underneath with the photo by using some glue. So you can see there that I've got that spacing fairly right. So the tip is you don't put it in this. So you do divide the page into 6 squares, 6 equal squares, but you don't put the left and the right elements or left and the right arches down in the middle of the square. You put them to like closer into the middle. You end up with a bigger space on the left and the right and smaller spaces from those elements to the middle element so that it looks, I hope that makes sense, so that it looks properly spaced. So it's better to have more space around the outside of the elements and have them nice and neatly in the middle and not too spaced out to the edges. Because my motto is you want elements to connect to each other. So in a grid, you might want them overlapping, but you want them to stay close enough to each other that they look like they will belong together, if that makes sense, hopefully. And you can see that although all these elements are separate and not touching, they are close. And with the adventure title in the middle, it also brings them all together in towards the middle. So that to me is important. I'm adding my journaling about our weekend away here. So this layout is also good because there's plenty of room to include details about what your photos are about. So I'm just making my notes there. And thank you very much for joining me for this. If you have enjoyed it, I would really appreciate if you press like. And if you're not already a subscriber, if you subscribe to my channel, if you have any questions about what I've done with this layout, please feel free to leave a comment. These are the detailed photos, so you'll be able to see the embellishments. I've also added some of the pearls that come with this collection. I've added those on the paper elements, and I think they're a really nice finishing touch there. So you can see all of the different squares and how I've embellished them. And yeah, I was really happy with how this worked out. Thanks for joining me, and I'll have some more layouts again coming soon. Bye. Bye.